www.theyeshivanetitem8197.
Zum Spitz ist ein Zakuwe Natanik aufzuriefen, dem allem bekannten Magid, man kann sagen der Pusik, Joisaiv hier am Aschbet, wo es Fieter, Tausende, in zehntelige Tausende Nefushes Yisroel, Haravagun Achuset, Reb Yosef Yitzchak Jacobson.
Ich schäme sich ein bisschen reden auf Englisch, so ein Euler. Ah? Ich soll sich abschämen. So passt es so nicht. Aber man kann reden Mama loschen mit heimischen, chassidischen Jiden. Und ich darf reden auf Englisch. Aber kol ma shabalabai is oimele chasei, chitz mit sei. Es calls man avarf mit der Staroi, es heißt reden Englisch, und wir reden Englisch. Und mit Stamme, kavanossi ritzuya, als chassidische Jiden, wenn sie hätten noch Hadrasche in Yiddish, it's like, here we go again. Here goes another one. English, it sounds sophisticated, right? Like everybody feels it. Fine, so sein also, echshaloi, ja, gamas mein Yiddish, is a reine russische, litwische Yiddish. Es ist nicht ein verhackte, verwundete Yiddish. Aber okay, so sein auf Englisch. They once invited the Ponevezher Rav, Rabbi Yosef Shlomo Khan, man Zeichet Tzadik Livracha, to speak at a dinner. But as the minig by most Jewish dinners, Baruch Hashem, not this one, there's 10 speakers before the main speaker. The minig. So there was one speaker, another speaker. At the end, they asked Rav Kahneman to get up and speak. So he gets up and he says, Hetzechain Rabbi Sai, alle redne Bismir haben gered wegen Teure. Aber was haben sie gemeint? Sie haben gemeint Geld. Ich will reden wegen Geld, aber ich mein Teure. Also it angeben the drasha. Okay. So our Balachsanya Reb Meshulam asked, why are we here? Why are we here? So you could guess probably the reason why you're here. But the Ponevezher Rav has gesagt, Berachel bitchak tana. The truth is, I am really thrilled by this privilege of being here for the Haboinim of Yeshivas Birchas David. And thank you, Reb Meshulam, V'zugasoi, the Bnei Bayis, for your hachnosas orchim, for your hospitality, more importantly, for your big hearts, your great hearts. And thank you so much to my friend, the Avram Yekusiel, Shlita, the patron HaYeshiva, the Chut HaShedra behind the yeshiva, the Neshama behind the yeshiva, and the passion behind the yeshiva. So zayin la'richis yomim v'shanim toivus, metoich harchuvus hadas, begeshem uberuach gam yochat. So I was once having a conversation with a group of people who are responsible for the education of many young boys, many bachra. And there was an argument. There was a vikuach, there was a debate about what's the right way of being mechanech. And at the end of the conversation, I was getting nowhere. So I said, Moirai v'rabboi sei tayere Yidden, heint hat it mir gut aufgeklärt a Gemara. Now I understand the Gemara in Meseches Nida. Daf Lamed says the Gemara that a child, a fetus, havlad b'meimoi, learns the whole Torah. Kol atay 9 months. Malam de noisre kol atay kula. Kivon sheyotzel avir oilam, he comes out. Bo malach. A malach comes, sotre al piv. Gives him a patch on his mouth. Umeshakchoy. And this little baby, this little malachol, forgets the whole Torah. What type of story is this? What type of story is this? A malach kommt, get a patch. You forget the whole Torah from a patch of a malach? And what's the purpose? What's the Gemara trying to tell us? Anybody who remembers Kol HaTorah Kula from the womb of your mother? And why do the Japanese also have something on top of their mouth? They also learn Kol HaTorah Kula. Mainly in South Korea, they translated Gemara into South Korean because they decided that the Jews are the most brilliant people, right? So they asked, what's the side? They said Gemara. So I saw a translation of Gemara into South Korean. So soon have Daf Yomi, see a Mashas, are good to South Korea. But what about the Japanese? What do they have? So when I asked the question, when I was a kid, So nicht gewesen a Malach, so gewesen an abuser, but whatever. So I told the Chevra, now I understand the Gemara. The Gemara is telling you something. You have a child, he's the sweetest kid in the world, and he learned the whole Torah. He has a tfisa in the whole Torah. And then comes a Jew, and you look at him, he looks like a Malach. An ehrlich Yid. A feine, tired Yid. A Malach. Straight to Gan Eden. V'sotrei al piv. But he gives one smack to this child. A physical smack or an emotional smack. Or meshakche kol ha-Torah kula. And with that one smack, he causes him to forget the Torah. And it doesn't come from a Rasha. It's a Malach. It's a good Jew. A Jew who's Maser v'nasen zu Torah und zu Yireh Shamayim und kocht sich in a Blatt Gemara und in a Maram Schiff und in a Rebbe Kiva Eger und a viele Chidush Rabbeinu Chaim Alevi al Rambam und a viele Chidush Agris Stencils und kennt jeden Chsam Seufe und kennt a viele jeden Yismach Moshe. He's a good guy, good man. And he's doing what he knows. He's doing actually what was done to him. That's how you do it. He doesn't realize he just detached. He severed the conscious connection of this child, of this bocher, from Torah. Appella de Kamaisa. You tell me if it's not strange. And don't blame this on Rabbi YY. You can blame this on Rashi. Open up a Rashi, the first pasuk of Dvarim, this week. Says Rashi, Moshe decided to be Meichiach Jews, Samuch lemisosoi. 5 weeks before his passing, he decided it's time to give an Abyssal Musa. He waited 120 years to give a Musa drasha. Haflu a fella. Frekt Rashi favos. You give Musa when you're 120? When did your father give you Musa? When you're 120? No. He's 25 years old. He starts having kids. So Rashi Lomad me Yaakov. When was Yaakov Mechiach his children? Samuch lemisosei, 147 years old. He decided to be Mechiach Reuven. Reuven, Pchoiri Yato, Koichi v'neishes Yetzer says v'yesses, Pachas kamayim, al toisar. Alisa al milshkevei avichos, chilalta yitzui Allah. How long ago did Reuven do the Maisa with Bilhah? He took out Yaakov's bed from Leah's oil and put it in Bilhah's oil. He took it out of Bilhah's oil and he put it into Rachel's oil, into Leah's oil. How many years ago was this? This is when Rachel passed away. So this is close to 60 years. 60 years, Yaakov was quiet. Asks Rashi, why did he wait? You know why? Omar Yaakov, if I give Musa to Reuven now, Shem yelech v'yidbak ba'aisav uchi. Reuven is going to say, bye-bye, tate. Bye-bye. Ich gehe zu Esav. Wait. Reuven? B'chor Yisrael, Shifte Yutke. Yeser says, v'yeser ois. He's leaving Yaakov. He's going to Esav. As is a Rashi. Quoting Chazal. So Yaakov knew. It may happen. Wait, don't say Musa. On my deathbed, I'll say Musa. So somebody once asked me, why wasn't he afraid that now Yaakov is going to go to Reuven? So another year, that Reuven is going to go to Esav. Why wasn't he afraid now? Somebody said, Shinga had kinder mit Shidduchim, he had to get them into seminary, he had to marry over the Einiklach, one Einikel wanted to go to Brisk, one Einikel wanted to go to the Mir, one wanted to go to Slobodka, one wanted to go to Ponovich, one wanted to go to Chevron, one wanted to go to Chabin. Yeah, Racham so Shinish gepasst, was it against the Esav? Who's your Zayda? Oh, he's one of Esav's. Esav's Meshamish Bakoidish. So Shinish gepasst, Reuven wasn't the Psa, a kleine Bachero, right? He was a Psa, this. So Mele, the Edims, the Einiklach, they were all giving Shiyurim, Rosh HaKoilel, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shekol Bnei HaGoyle, Tzadik Yisoid Oilam, Amud Hayom, and Pater Shachoyzik. So it's nicht gepasst. But what's the real reason? Das is good for a bissl Spaß. What's the real reason? Why was Yaakov not afraid now? If Reuven is such a fragile person, as schwachenke, as ich gebe Musse, läuft weg zu Esav, von allen Menschen. Es ist nicht der geht von ein Chsidis an andere Chsidis. Meile. Es ist nicht, wird gehen in an Rosh Hashanah. Meile. Geht zu Esav geht Ad kedei kach? If you're so afraid, shouldn't you be afraid even later? I looked at the Sid and I'll tell you, no, you don't understand what Rashi is saying. When Reuven heard the Musar from Yaakov, he looked at him and he said, Du bist doch mein B'chor. Koichi v'reish esoini. Mein Stolz, my love, my koyach, mein Kraft. But you have a challenge you have to overcome. And Reuven looked at himself and he thought, my father was quiet for 60 years. 60 Jahre nicht gesagt ein Wort. Vayishma Yaakov steht in Vayishlach. He heard and he said nothing. For 60 years. Why? Because he wants me to feel his connection, his love, his attachment. When you realize you have such a father, you don't go to Esav. When you realize you have such a father, you don't go to Esav. There was a Yid, Shtikl Mishpacha, mein Rabbi Yankele Galinsky. Remember Rabbi Yankele Galinsky? An Avardike. Then a Magid in Bnei Brak. So Rabbi Yankele once shared, he came into the Steipler Gon, Zechet Tzadik Levrach. Steipler says, Rabbi Yankele, I just thought our word has been reingefallen. And this is what he says. Steipler Gon told it to Rabbi Yankele Galinsky. He said it over. Says Yaakov says, Ki b'makli avartias hayardin. Only with my stick? Yitzchak was a rich man. He couldn't give him a couple of shekel. When Avraham sent Eliezer for a shidduch, Kol asheloi asara gmalim mit alle sushis in the Welt. Kol tuv. He sends Yaakov to get a shidduch. Pstalis, tefillin, a par kichlach, psarogele, chalapachas hakugel like we had it tonight. Garnish b'makli, my stick. So what does Rashi say? He sent him with a lot of money. But Esav sent his son Eliphaz to kill Yaakov. Eliphaz came to Yaakov. He said, I got to kill you. In our family, Kibbud Av is a very big mitzvah. Tati said, we need to say Kaddish for you. Was tut men? Sagt Rashi, Ulefi shegadal Eliphaz b'chaykoi shel Yitzchak. Since Eliphaz grew up in the bosom, in the chayk, in the shois from Yitzchak, he couldn't just kill Yaakov. So what did Yaakov do to his murderer? What did Yaakov do? He started to give a shir Masechta Nedarim. He said, the state in Nedarim daf chav, ani chashuv, kemeis, b'meila darfst du mir nicht targenen. Kennst öffnen a Gemara, yeah? And you'll see, take away my money, shen chashuv kemeis, bin ich schon a cheftze von a meis. B'meila is good. And Eliphaz says, geschmack of art, give me your money, and Yaakov is alive. Says the Steipler, you know who Eliphaz was? We know who Esav was. Eliphaz was already the next generation. Take a look in Vayishlach and in the Rashis, based on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, who Eliphaz was. Mamzer ben Mamzer of Shal Mamzer, Beiler Shal Mamzer. There was Gilead Reis dort rechts, links und center, geknippt und gebunden, et Chasna got mit der Mama, et Chasna got mit der Tochter, and you know who his tachshit was? Amalek. So Mela Esav, Yitzchak didn't throw out of the house. For a kind. I get it. It's a pity that Yitzchak didn't take a consultation with some of the mumchim today, and they would have told him, throw him out of the house. Somebody once told me, I told the father, you don't throw out a child. At least 99% of the time. Before you throw out a child, remember it's pikuach nefesh mamish. He says, Hashem told Avram to throw out his child. I said, interessant. Du weißt das. Und Yitzchak hat es nicht gewusst. Hashem told his father, throw out Yishmael. And Yitzchak didn't know that. He threw him out because of him. Next generation doesn't know. It's his son. I said, Yitzchak Mistam was affected by my clips. He was watching too many Rabbi Weiwei clips. Yeah? I said, but you know what? Maybe throw him out of the house, but I'll tell you who you have to send away with him. His mother. She'll probably like it. Schick de Mame Gesundheit. Schick de Kind, aber schick de Mame mit them. And also, when the Rebbeinu Shalom tells you to do it, let me know, I'll help you. When you get that message straight from the Rebbeinu Shalom, let me know. Mela Esav. But Eliphaz to keep in the house? You spoke about an addict. Eliphaz. Esav is like when I Yisrael Mumar. Eliphaz Tamanenikal. And the Tate van Amalek. Sagt Rashi, Godal b'cheikoi shel Yitzchak. In the Shois, Yitzchak hat ihm gehalten, beim Shabbos Siddur, und gesungen, Koech soif noyam shawabos. And Eliphaz probably had an iPhone under the Shabbos table, yeah, and he was doing videos, or worse. Oy vi yurachamecha mizgoylelim, Godal b'cheikoi shel Yitzchak. Says the Stipler. Yitzchak would not let go of his grandson. So you're going to say, okay, Yitzchak was a nice man. No. That's why Klal Yisrael exists today, Al Pi Teva. Because if Eliphaz would have murdered Yaakov, there would be no hemshich to the Avos Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. There would be no Jew alive today. So why are the Jewish people alive today? Said the Stipler Gaon. Because Yitzchak would not let go of Eliphaz. Did Eliphaz become Rabban Shel Kol Bnei HaGoyla? No. Did he become the Tzaddik Hador? No. Did he become the Gaon Hador? No. But all of Klal Yisrael was saved because Yitzchak kept him close. And as I thought about it, I remember I opened up on Eiv. I think it's Perek Vav. Vayan Eliphaz Hatemoni. Eliphaz becomes suddenly a Navi. Sagt Rashi. It's Ben Esav. Ulefisha Gadal B'cheikoi Shel Yitzchak Shorsal of Ruach HaKodesh. Wow. Not just he didn't kill Yaakov. One day he became a Navi Elokim. He became a Baal Ruach HaKodesh. Because Gadal B'cheikoi Shel Yitzchak. You know, I was once at a chasana. Sometimes you hear something and you know you're going to remember it for life. Sometimes you hear something and a few hours later you're trying to remember it. Sometimes you hear something, you know this is going to stay with you. Ad zibule basrais. I was at a chasana, I remember it was in Morristown, New Jersey. I was sitting at the Kabbalas Punim. There was some sponge cake that wasn't royal achille. A bissel royal achila. And there was Masada Kiddushin was sitting in front of me. He's a Yiddish and Afanel Emes. His name was Reb Shalom Ber Gordon. Shalom Ber Gordon was a Rav many years in Newark and then in Maplewood in New Jersey. He was an El to the Yid. I saw that he's not feeling well. I found out later that he had cancer. And he passed away a little while later. I took a look at him. We're sitting one-on-one, panim el panim, at the Kabbalas Punim. I said, Reb Shalom Ber, is that in Rabbanas 60 years? You have been in the rabbinate for 60 years. Amerikaner Rabbanas. Sagt mir, was ihr gelernt in 60 years. Tell me what you learned. It's not a fair question to ask a Rav what he learned in 60 years mit Balabatim. Verstehst? Yeah? Every day is doch noch an Ibe Lebenish. Especially when you have a good board of directors, present company excluded. But I wanted to know. So he looks at me, he says, without skipping a beat, he says, I'll tell you a story. I was a younger man, and I got an offer to get this job. Newark, New Jersey, Tufshin Tess, 1949. America and Tufshin Tess is not America, Tufshin Payalef. As you understand. Orthodox Jewry was so weak and frail, completely on the defensive. You could count the yeshivas that existed in the United States on one hand. You can count the Chinuch Altaris HaKodesh on one hand or two hands. My mother told me when she was going out with my father, Olav Shalom, in Tufshin Tezai in 1956, they were walking in Manhattan. My father had a beard, and everybody was pointing. It's like a man who landed from another planet, pointing. This is 1956. Ayid mit habord is nicht gewesen benimtze. And he gets this rabbanus for an Orthodox synagogue in Newark, New Jersey. Nu, stellt sich weg der erste Shabbos, and he talks about Shabbos. President tells him, the Olam here is not so into Shabbos. They drive on Shabbos. Change the subject next week. No, next week he talks about kashrus. He says it's not so popular. Not everybody eats kosher. You don't want to offend anybody. No. Next week he speaks about a Jewish education. He says most kids go to public school. It's not good to talk about. Next week he spoke about a mikveh. Oy, 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 oy. It says mamish bayiro bayimotze in America. So he looks at the president. He says, so what do you want me to talk about? I can't talk about Shabbos. I can't talk about mikveh. I can't talk about kashrus. I can't talk about chinuch. He says, talk about Judaism. Red wegen Yiddishkeit. Reb Shalom Ber, who I knew, he was an Erlich Yidder Yirei Shemayim. He couldn't live with himself. What am I supposed to do with this shul? If I tell them what they want to hear, bin ich kein Rav nicht, ich bin a per Adam. If I tell them what they need to hear, they give me a one-way ticket through the exit door. So what's left? They'll get a poitical. Darf man sich Messiah sein mit ihm? He told me I went to be sich Messiah mit the Rebbe Rayatz, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak Shneus and Zech Tzadik Levracha, who passed away 1 year later, Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud 1950. He was a paralyzed man. He couldn't speak then, but he was very active. He ran away from Nazi-occupied Warsaw 10 years earlier and settled in Brooklyn. He said, I went into the Lubavitcher Rebbe, to the Rebbe Rayatz, and I presented my dilemma. If I do my job as a Rav, they'll throw me out. If I don't do my job as a Rav and I just chan for them and tell them nice things every Shabbos, what am I doing? Ki lekach noit zarti. Was tue ich mit meinem Leben? I heard this nish klei sheni, I heard this klei rishon. He says if you ever saw a video or a picture of the Rayatz, Einav mamish k'may malach elikim. You know his eyes, the Rebbe Rayatz's eyes. Gibt mir a Kuck mit seiner Helike Augen. And he says, Sherb Shalom Ber, du bist einmal gewesen in Auschwitz. Auschwitz? The Rebbe says I was in Auschwitz. I came to ask about my Rabbonis in Newark, not if Auschwitz. Now you have to know, even today, zwischen heimische Yidden is gainst Auschwitz is an avoide gdoila. But in 1949, it was one of the fundamental Aseres Adibris of American Jews. They would sit in the Schwitz Fashos, and they would decide the fate of President Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy. I mean, Ad Hayoim sitzen, where I live in Monsey, man sitzt in Schwitz, Erev Shabbos, man knackt Semmitschkes, sunflower seeds. And that's when Jews decide who's going to run the United States of America. Of course, who's going to run Israel. That's where the the summits, the world summits of Klal Yisrael come together to decide wer is gerecht, wer is nicht gerecht. I mean, if you've ever been there. So he was wondering. So he looks at the Rebbe, he tells me I was embarrassed. Und ich sage, yeah, ich bin gewesen in Auschwitz, ich weiß, was Auschwitz ist. So he says, sei mir metayer. Schilder mir. Describe it to me. He says, what should I tell the Rebbe? About Adam and Chava before the Eitz Hadas? What should I tell the Rebbe about Auschwitz? Passt doch nicht. What am I going to start saying? So I say, it's hot Zimmer. Se brennt a fire, it's hot. There's coals, like a cholim, it's a fire. Und se sehr heiß. Und man schwitzt. And everybody loves it. And there's steps. And you go higher and higher. And the heat rises. So you go higher and you get hotter. And the whole body is burning hot. And the Rebbe says, no, Nachdem. He says, then, in the real schwitzes, you have a shamish, a beder, a gabbai. And he has a bezim. Yeah, you ever know? You weiß nicht, huh? Nebach. Afa Yosem to Dor Shalayodas Yosef. Aber Eves. Okay, so da a bezim. Yeah, it's called a broom. You should come to my neck of the woods. We'll introduce you to Olam Haza. Some people call it Olam Haba. And nem tarois a bezim, and hebt und geben Schmitz. Fragt der Rebbe und nach dem, he says, man ruft sich ab zusammen, man sagt ihm, mehr, starke, mehr. So the Rebbe looks at me, he says, ich verstehe nicht. If somebody walks over in the street, somebody walks over to you in the street with a broom and starts whipping you over your back, what are you going to do? He says, either you call the police, or you run away, or abba laharga, chashkem laharga, you hit him back. He says, was in the Schwitz, bet menem, fa mer und mer. Shalom Ber tells me that Yosef Yitzchak at this point, bin ich gewen genicklig zu wissen, als ich soll schweigen. At this point, I understood, let me be quiet. Ruft sich ab der Rebbe zu mir und sagt Shalom Ber, if you go over to somebody with a broom in the street, und man hebt him on klappen, he'll run away, he'll punch you back in the nose, he'll call the police. But in the Schwitz, that's not what you do. Frier warmt men hem on. Dennoch hebt men hem auf. Und dennoch beschaß men hem tareis a besen. Und man hebt an klappen, sagt mehr. You don't just beat him. You bring him into a room where he becomes warm and passionate. His heart and his body is on fire. And then you lift him up from step to step to step. Then when you take out a broom, he says, more. And the Rebbe Rayatz looked at Reb Shalom Ber Gordon and he says, Reb Shalom Ber, verwandel dein Schul in a Schwitz. Und jemals wirst, wenn du sollst anwarmen Jiden und aufheben Jiden. Und demalt, wenn du wirst herausnehmen den Busen, wollen sie sich betten von mehr und mehr. And he looked at me and he says, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, this was the one and only piece of advice I needed to hear for my career over the last 60 years. That's all I had to hear. And from that day, my hatzlocha was ein l'shayir. And just to show a cook von Areben, not everybody, but though many people discovered the Gemara. They discovered the Gemara through Art Scroll. Sie beloschen Anglis, sie beloschen Akoidish, sie auf einander sprach. Reb Nosson Sherman was one of those American kids in Newark. And Reb Shalom Ber Gordon plucked him out, sent him to Torah Vadas, to Reb Gedalia Shur. Is that I said, come in an Art Scroll. This is just one effect from a Schwitz on one person. The whole Art Scroll revolution goes back to a Schwitz in Newark, New Jersey, von a younger man. Because you and I know that people want to hear the truth. Menschen lechzen for the emes. Who doesn't want to hear the truth? You think boys don't want to be successful? You think the 15-year-old boys in Borough Park, Williamsburg, Muncie, Lakewood, Kiryas Yale, Toronto, Chicago, Bnei Brak, Yerushalayim, London, Manchester, and don't want to be successful people? All of you want to be successful. Vaharaya, you're here. But suddenly the gene didn't go over to the kids. Nah, I want to stay in bed till 4 o'clock in the afternoon because that's mamashlis anegal Hashem. But somehow there's a pain in me. There's a paralysis in me. Who doesn't want to be successful? When you create a schwitz, you warm people up. You lift them up. You embrace them. You show them who they really are and who they can be, and you give them unconditional respect and pride and acceptance and love. Challenge me. Stimulate me. Bring out my potential. And make of me the person I'm capable of becoming. You know, I want to share something with you. I would say that this is divrei nevuah mamish. That's how I would put it. You'll judge. Just my opinion. I open up a Heilige Sefer Noam Elimelech that I think everybody around the table heard of. But usually when you hear the word Noam Elimelech, the Sefer, many of you shut down because you heard so many Noam Elimelechs by Shalosh Shudas, it triggers the herring, the sight of herring and sponge cake. The lights are going dim because the shul can't afford the electricity. The Skynim are in a bad mood because somebody woke them up from the nap, right? And Shabbos is ending. You know that matzah Shalosh Shudas in shul? The Zmiris are being sung by 3 depressed people. Yeah? It looks like you have to call the Chevra Kadisha. And then the guy who gets up, Zak Nachanoyim Elimelech, which he doesn't understand a word of. And he says, the Sefer Shel Tzaddikim, how am I supposed to understand it? So I'm going to tell you on Noam Elimelech, but please, no triggers. Don't associate it not with herring, not with sponge cake, not with electricity going down, and not with the neshama Yeseda leaving, and the pizza not going to be ready for Motzei Shabbos. Tune in, and you'll hear Nevuah for Tufshin Pai Aleph, and Nevuah for Yeshivas Birchas David, and for the program Haboinim. Sagt die Mishnah, Baba Metzia Daf Yud, lass mal lernen am Mishnah zusammen. Ras ha-Metzia v'nafal aleha. You're walking in the street, and you see a tennis bracelet. Now you're having a 40th anniversary next week, and your wife was meramez that a tennis bracelet will given good. The problem is a Pesach Heftze cost 25 grand, right? So what's Titman? It's a problem, yeah? So you try to convince her to get ice cream and schnitzel instead. Or to go to Cancun. It'd be less than $25,000. Okay. Suddenly, Ras HaMetzia. You see a bracelet, a tennis bracelet. Amachai HaMetzia. Zog the Mishnah v'nafal aleha. You fall on it. You drop over it. But you didn't lift it up. Uba Hasheni v'hechzik boy. V'hechzik boy. Comes another person, another guy who has an anniversary in 2 weeks. V'hechzik boy, and he's teufus, and he chaps it. Zeh shehechzik boy, kana. Zocha. The second person is zoicha, not the first person. Why? First person fell on it, but he didn't lift it up. There was no meshicha, there was no hagbah, there was no kinyan. The second guy took it, hechzik, he held it. It's his. Frag the Gemara, Daf Yud. Frag the Gemara, I don't understand. Chazal were mesaken, daled ames shel adam, koines loy b'chol mokem. The moment Chaim Yankel, the first man, walked into the daled ames of the tennis bracelet, even before Nafal, koines loy. I get the cash. And for the Gemara, I quote, Kiv on the Nafal alei, Gila daite de benefile nichele de nikla, the nikna. But daladama is sloy nichele de nikna. Because he fell on it, so he's making kilo a statement. I don't want to be mekabel the takonas chazal of daladamas. I'm not interested in it. If you would be interested in it, was falster. I don't want to be mekabel. Efshi b'takonazu. I want to be at koina through physically being on top of it. Ah, you extricated yourself, you will mafkir yourself from the king and daladamis. Fine. Now we go back to the basics. Zeh shehechzik by kana, you weren't hechzik. Zog de Noam Elimelech, schisa yugen alayni val kol Yisrael. Open your hearts. Roes hametzia. Sometimes we see a neshama, and the neshama is hametzia. It's something special. Wie sagt man in Yiddish? Gegefinnen hametzia. Something unique. Something out of this world. Sametzia. Such a sensitive soul. Such a beautiful soul. Such a good soul. Matzasi David Avdi, sagt the Medrash. Heichen Matzusi? Bis Doim. Where did the Rebbeinu Shalom find David? By Lloyd's daughters. Ammon, Moav. Rus came from Moav. Matzusi. You don't expect it here. So the name sometimes there are neshamas that come out in places that are unexpected, in families that are unexpected. It's a mitzvah. V'nafal aleha. But instead of lifting up this neshama, instead of nurturing this neshama, nafal aleha, you fall on it. And the Noam Elimelech says words, which I'm translating into English. You see such a sensitive soul, and instead of lifting it up, you fall over it, scarring it, abusing it, wounding it, causing it to have a deeper nefillah. Either the soul does it to itself, not knowing who it is, feeling so much pain. It's trying to numb the pain. It's trying to distract itself from all its pain. So it falls down, it falls down. And he falls on the neshama, and it goes deeper and deeper into the abyss. Or other people, not knowing, b'yodim or below yodim, consciously or unconsciously, they traumatize the soul even more. This poor Metzia is now feeling like a piece of garbage. Uba hasheni, says the Noam Elimelech, kumt a zweite Yid, vehechzig boy, vehechzig bo. And he holds on, and he lifts up this neshama, and he says, hechzik miloshen hischaskus. Somebody comes to this neshama, and looks the neshama in the eyes and says, you're my boy, you're my girl, you're my child, I will never let you go. I love you, and I am proud of you, and I embrace you, and I am here for you, and I respect you, and I cherish you. Zog the Noam Elimelech, zachaba. Nobody can estimate the schus, the privilege, and the edelkeit, zakus, the zach, of this person who had the schus to be machzik and lift up this neshama. I'm reading the Noam Elimelech, and I'm like, wow, but now comes the bomb. Frag the Gemara, no. That's not how you coin on neshama. Is chaskos? No. Daled Amis. What's Daled Amis? Zog the Gemara, Meis Mitzvah. Daled Amos of Koinas Loy. How large is the grave of a person? How big? Most people are between 5 and 7 feet. Somewhere in between. That's Daled Amos. That's how much a caver is. So a Meis Mitzvah, when you find a Meis Mitzvah, wherever it is, he's kind of the Daled Amos, and you can bury him, and nobody has reshus to be machalik, to exclude him. So it's the din of a mes mitzvah. Ain't it for the takonis? Frag the Gemara, you want to be kind on the sham of us as gefallen? Daled Amos kindness loy. You know what the Yiddish veg is? Call in the bacher and say, Bacherol, ein Tag wirst du sterben. You're going to die. And you're going to have Daled Amos. You better wake up and smell the coffee. Genug mit deinen Narrischkeiten. Genug mit deinem Bittel Teure. Genug mit deiner Virus. Genug mit deinen Addictions. Genug mit deinen Meise Havolim. Genug mit deinen Dwarren Betelim. Genug mit deinen Teives. Yas kilo yoim amise. So du a Gehennem auf der Welt. Ah, du glaubst nicht, der Gehennem. Bist du doch der Emesapi-Keures, was wird brennen in Gehennem. La-adele yoil-me-yoil-lumim. Gehennem, heim Gehennem kule, heim einem kule. In der Gemarische schon. Du bist doch der Emesa-Oiche Yisrael, Poike Yisrael. That's how you coin on a Shomer. Sag him wer it is. Guck him rein in Parzuf. Und red mit ihm wegen Joima Misse, red mit ihm wegen Ganeiden, red mit ihm wegen Gehennem, red mit ihm wegen Schar und Eunisch, tell him yesh din, wie yesh dayen, afilu siche kalle. Osid liten of din v'cheshben. Afilu soch, ben shal yad ben shalosh. Choyze meir chamel chome. Tell him the truth. Was hackst du mit des Chaskus? Hechsig boy, you're such a good boy. That's a good boy. What's a good boy? We know the truth. Yeah, it's a good boy. It's good for a dinner for Birchas David. You have to fund a couple of dollars so people get up and say, they're good boys. Come on. As a kind willst du? That's who you're taking for your daughter? Du machst doch shevach kiddes und shevach bdickes von jeden Rosh Yeshiva und jeden Schatchen auf der Welt. That's not how you koin on a shama. What did you tell your own son? What are you telling your son to tell your anicle? Come on! Get out of this rut. Enough. Become a mensch. Learn from Tati. Learn from Zaidi. We wake up 4:30 in the morning every day. 6 o'clock is noch 3 Blatt Gemara. 7:30 is noch Shachris. By 8:30 we already made $2 million. And we could retire. You know why we don't retire? Because we want to support you. And you know why Zaidi survived Hitler? So that you should sit on a couch and do nothing? Mela Thursday night, Toyamel, fine, we also do nothing. But like Yoimam Valayla, Toyamel? A ganze Leben, Toyamel, Chayim Zachel? That's how you coin on a shama. That's Seichel, Red MS. Put in skilla, sreifa, hedek, chenek, malchus, Mrs. Besden, par carbonis. The question of the Noam Elimelech. You want to be koin on neshama? Tell him about death. Hakam nish kin shainik mit his chaskus. I get the kasha. I get 50 emails a day with this Noam Elimelech. They're not quoting the Noam Elimelech. They're quoting what they think is brilliant chinuch, brilliant pedagogy. Listen to his answer. And for the Noam Elimelech, listen to this. Kivon de nafal alei, nichel gole daita, de benefile nichele de nikne, de likne, bedalad ames loy nichele de likne. Look at this boy's life. Look at this girl's life. Look at this person's life. And you'll see that they are in a rut. They're stuck. Benefila. They're abusing themselves. They're ruining themselves. They're not living a productive life. They're yoyred midechi el dechi, from one level of nefila to a lower level of nefila. What do you learn from this? That the way they want to be koine their neshama, the way they want to live is benefila. They don't care about Dalet Ames. In the words of the Noam Elimelech, here is a person, the loy chayesh lemisa. You're threatening him death and Gehenna. Don't you understand? This kid is not afraid to die. He couldn't care less. You know why? Death for him will actually be a solution. Don't you realize that he buried 3 of his friends? Don't you realize that if you go to the cemetery, there's 7 graves of the same age there, and he knew them all? Don't you realize that you want to live? And if I tell you you're going to kill yourself, you get scared. Because for you, death is fearful. Death is dreadful. Nobody wants to die. But the Noam Elimelech says, Goli daite. He couldn't care less about Yom HaMisa. What you want to scare him with is for him a schar. As boys told me, kill me so I won't have to wake up tomorrow in the morning with this pain. Kill me, it'll be much better. I still don't know why I didn't do it. Like Ploini Almaini, my friend. Now, most adults don't understand this. Healthy people don't understand this. We would do everything to live. What would you not give up in order to live? What? I don't understand it. But I know it. I know it from experience. I know it from contact. I know it from listening. And I know it from people. I'm going to die? Great. So you're telling him Thank you. You have to live a good life and a productive life. Be a mensch. You don't want to sit in Kailul, no problem. Go into real estate. And you think you just said a brilliant thing. You a mamish mechadish or a Bakiva Eger. And you think you're like a liberal father. Stand off in a cup. You gave us heta to your son that he doesn't have to sit in Lakewood Kol Yamav or here in Kailul Kol Yamav. He's allowed to do like his father and Zayda Zint Moshe Rabbeinu, who were in real estate Kiyadua. Don't you get it? That there is something very broken in this person. So you say, why? His mother's a good mother. My wife makes the best kugel in Butter Park. You know that? And she even makes sourdough challah. And the coleslaw that we have has so much sugar and mayonnaise, it surpasses every other family in health and cholesterol. Never mind the liver, und the zerschmetterte Eier, und the kuglach, und the kichlach, and the kasha, and the calories, and the cholesterol, als mit kuf, and the kedisha. Don't you realize a good mother, a good father, a good family? You are a good family. You're wonderful people. But this boy, for whatever reason, it could be genetic, it could be environment, it could be he's an HSP. He's a highly sensitive person. And it could be that he's actually more spiritual than all of his frum relatives. Dr. Twersky, Olav Shalom Reb Avram Yeshua Eshel Twersky, told me, I said, Dr. Twersky, 60 years you're in recovery. Same question I asked Rabbi Gordon. I asked Dr. Twersky. 60 years you're in recovery. What did you learn? Was darf ich gehen studieren 60 Jahre? Ich kann haben a conversation, ein sentence und wissen. It's called Derech Tzara. Shortcuts. Dr. Twersky looked me in the eyes and he said, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, 60 years of experience have taught me that the addicts among us are the most spiritual among us. We know how to deal with hypocrisy through distracting ourselves with small distractions. Some souls are too deep, too sensitive, too spiritual. They can't just cover up their pain with small distractions. Their pain is so deep, they have to numb it. They have to numb it with drugs. And tomorrow you need more and more because they're really looking for God, for emes, for ruchnis, for because they don't know it. And some souls are traumatized by existence itself. When the Arizal said that all of existence is based on a tzimtzum, on the helm of Ein Sof, most of us don't mind. Nu, me zet nicht der Eberste, me geht schlafen weiter. Yeah? Give me some Chinese food and a bissel sushi, right? Me geht schlafen. But some souls actually feel the pain of existence. You're looking at me as though I'm a little strange. But this is the truth. Living is painful because it's a state of pirut, zinishkin dveikus. And therefore they need oimek hatoyre, pnimiyus hatoyre to survive. They need Ein Sof in their lives. And then there's epigenetics. Genes that we get from our parents and grandparents with all the trauma. And then there's things that happen in school. And then there's kids who are struggling with learning and they feel for 10 years, they feel like absolute losers. And then there's people who deal with mental challenges. And people who deal with abuse. And those who are molested. Rachmana litzlan. V'chuli, v'chuli, v'chuli. Comes Rebbe Elimelech, the Rebbe Melech, and says, you're going to tell him, if you don't wake up like a man, if you don't go back to yeshiva, you're going to end up dying. That's good news, Tati. Thank you. Amen. Soll sein bekorev. And you pick up your hands. Bedalad ames loy nichele delikni loy chayesh lemissa. Says the Noam Elimelech. There's only one thing you could do. And what's that thing? Bo hasheni. Staf kommen at zweite yid. A different approach. Vehechzik boy. Hold on to this boy tight. Attachment, 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 and attachment. Chalila v'chas to let him go. Chalila v'chas to sever the cords. Chalila v'chas to detach, to run upstairs, to avoid. Become more connected, more attached, more present, more loving, more emotionally connected. This child needs it more than any other child in the world. This child who's giving you an attitude. This child who is rebelling. This child who's not keeping Torah and mitzvahs. This child who's confused with his life. He needs more than anybody the hechzik boy. Father and mother, brothers, sisters, zaydas, bubbas, uncles, aunts. Hold on. Connect, attach, and keep him close. And keep her close. And if it causes me pain, because it's not the nachas I wanted, it's time to close my eyes and take a deep breath and ask not what Hashem can do for me, but ask what you can do for Hashem. Ask not what your child can do for you. Ask what you can do for your child. Ask not how your child is going to give the family nachas. Ask a different question. What does the Ribbono Shel Olam want from me right now to do with this child? That's the only question. Every other question is a question that comes from ego, from yeshes, from verstunkene, verdorbene gaive, and stupidity, and social conformity. People are ready to be makriv of their children on the mizbeach of social conformity. The mishpacha should look good, and for that, I'm going to kill a child. I asked the father, you know your kid is in a moised. He's being abused there. He's struggling there. He said, what are they going to say about my mishpacha if I put him into that other moised? Every kid went through this moised. That's why we have such a good name. I looked at him and I said, I never understood the avodah zarah of Moilech. Now I do. Now I do. Slaughter your child for the family reputation. And call yourself a Chassidish Yid. That's the Iker. And the Hartzveitig is the Greste. Because why didn't they like the Baal Shem Tov? Why did they put the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, the Baal Atanya in Cherem? Why did they put the Bar Nagadol in Cherem? What was the Machlokes? So now is not the place. And we live now in a different Kufa. But one of the biggest things was, by the Baal Shem Tov, and Nishgeven Azazach, as Mizmerachik Hayidin. You saw Torah Sachsidis is. Reb Meshulam was getting up and quoting Rabbi YY, as Hayid is a Chelek Elekam Imal. Oy vavoy! At least he's quoting me. Shenoich git. So my Chiddush, as a kind, as jeder Kind is a Kind von Ebersten. Chassidim darf an Anibel lernen Chassidus. Hebt on lernen the Baal Shem Tov's Torah. Hebt on lernen the Magid's Torah. Lernen durch Kedishas Levi. Lernen durch Moir V'Shemesh. Lernen durch Avodas Yisrael. Lernen durch Tanya. Lernen durch Kesser Shem Tov. Yoshe Divrei Emes. Eira Meir. Geht da durch das Svarim. Der Baal Shem Tov v'chol Talmidov haben nicht aufgehört predigen. Als jede Yid ist ein Stück Gedusche. Al tabet al mareyu. Ki ha'adam yireh le'nayim v'Hashem yireh le'levav. In Rishonim, wo man Kabbalah steht, Chelek Elekam Imal. Kommt der Baal Atanya, Chelek Elekam Imal. Mamash. Es ist nicht kein Guzme. It's a shtik Gettlichkeit. And if I'm looking at a 15-year-old boy who didn't make it in mainstream yeshivas, I'm looking at a Chelek Elekam Imal Mamash. Wie verschämst du es a Chelek Elekam Imal Mamash? How do you put him down? How do you put her down? How do you denigrate them? I don't see it. Weil ich bin a grobbe Jung. Ich bin der grobbe Jung. Ich bin nicht kein ausgeedelter Mensch. By me, everything is chitzonius. If you look like me, if you dress like me, if you eat the same type of food like me, now you're a good Jew. Hashem says you're a holy Jew. Was hab ich mit Nebersten? Ich hab mit Nachas, sorry. Ich hab nicht mit Nebersten. Who was born in the year Nachas? The Baal Shem Tov. Hey, Alofim Shnas Nachas, Tov Nun Ches, 1698. Soll the Baal Shem Tov sagen, was is Nachas? Nachas doesn't mean I should look good. Nachas means Nachas Ruach Lefonai Shamarti V'Naser Etzoini. Nachas is when you know you're a shliach of the Ribbono Shel Olam, and if this is your diamond, lift him up, cherish him, love him, be proud of him, just like when you were proud of him or her when they were 1 year old and 2 years old, and you looked at them and you said, "Alichteke neshama." Just because she's 16, just because he's 15, as a nishke lichteke neshama. Sunday, I asked the Rosh Yeshiva, her Avozne Shlita. I was honest with him. I said, "Ich verstehe ich nicht. Ihr seid ein Einikel von der Shevet HaLevi. Zeichet Tzadik Levrach. Ihr kommt von einer Choshev Mishpacha. Ihr seid ein Yid Talmid Chacham. Why didn't you get yourself a job in a mainstream yeshiva? You'll make what do they do? A paper, a headline. Rosh Yeshivas, Yeshiva Achi G'doyle B'chol Olam Kuloi. Harav Agon, Harav Vozna, Vete Kriegen covered. They'll put you at the dais of every event. You come in, Harav Vozna. Now you're in a yeshiva, unking covered. Barely attention, struggling. You have to explain to people that it's a good place. First after this, why don't you go to mainstream yeshiva and you'll get covered malachim like other Rosh Yeshivas? That's what I asked him. So he said, Sagite Kasha. Oh. He said, I was a mashgiach for 13 years. He says, two. If he's the Gemara, I'll give you an answer. So I was a mashgiach 13 years in a mainstream yeshiva. I was doing well. It was geschmack. And one day I turned to myself and I say, Ich will etwas auftan auf der Welt for the Ebersten. I'm going with the system. I'm going with the flow. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And then he told me something else. He told me that he heard from his Zayda, Reb Shmuel Vosner, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha, the Baal Shevet HaLevi, the Rav von Zichrer Meir in Bnei Brak, und dacht sich, der Rosh Yeshiva hat sich gehadet wird bei ihm, a Talmud von Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, and he told me that he heard from the Zayda, that he, as a child, was considered a dropout. He wasn't successful. He was sitting, gepatet at sight. He wasn't interested. The teacher said, nothing is going to come out of you. You're wasting your time. You're wasting mommy's money. You're wasting the family's money. This is a waste of time. And even after Bar Mitzvah, he was considered that boy who did not make it in the system. He was a dropout on the way to OTD. Only when he got older, mitzad hishtalshlus, which is beyond the realm of this speech, and the rest is history. He became one of the Poiski Hador. So Rabbi Vosner told me, I realized if this happened to my Zayda, Abal Kishrin, a goyin shekop, an ilu shekop, my Zayda, with the wrong vart, with the wrong person, would have been in the gutter. And this is before the Second World War. We know what was going on then. I thought to myself, how many Metzias are there out there in the street? And because of somebody who's not relatable to them, who doesn't get them, who's not connected to them, who doesn't give them respect, who doesn't make them feel dignity, who doesn't give them attachment. They feel they belong, they're connected, they're precious. And it's not a game, it's not fake. How many such Metzias are being lost? To Sha'ol Tachtis und noch weiter. And that's why I, for one, feel privileged and proud to be part of an evening dedicated not just to help, but to create a mahapecha, to create a revolution in our consciousness. That we have to understand that the moment our systems are not there for our children, we are off the derech. Maybe they're not off the derech. Somebody once said, we have dreams, and we create systems to facilitate our dreams. And then we become prisoners to those institutions and those systems. I once visited a place. I'm not going to get into the details. They're painful. And I said, I never understood a medrash. The medrash says that in Zdoim, they had one bed, you remember? If you were too short, they pulled your feet so you would get to the end of the bed. And what if you were too long? They cut off your head, they chopped off your heart, they chopped off your feet. And then I said, Zdoim is the same oisius like Moisid. Saddam Moisid and Saddam Moisid. You have a Moisid that the tachlis of the Moisid is to be there for the boys, to be there for the girls. And then you have a Moisid, Kaifenoise al Midas Moisid al Midas Doim. We have one bed for everybody. You like it, good. If not, we'll chop you up. We'll mutilate you. We'll amputate you. We'll destroy you. We'll insult you. A mother comes to me the other day. She says, her child was in a place, and somebody looks at her child and says, you know, you can't sit on your brain a whole day. Your brain needs oxygen. A sensitive boy. You killed a piece of his neshama. And trust me, I am not the person to get up and say, every moisid and every yeshiva is a horrible place. Let's close it down. Chalila v'chalila. There are unbelievable moisdes and unbelievable yeshivas and unbelievable schools and amazing Rosh Yeshivas and mashgichim and mashpiyim and mechanchim and rebbes and Rosh Yeshivas and moiras and amazing people. Some of them have mesiras nefesh mamish for chinuch. But we also have to recognize the truth that there's a huge amount of people, of youngsters, struggling terribly. They try another year until they plots. I want you to know, hashgacha. I got an email over a few weeks from a boy. I see he doesn't have a smartphone. He only has a flip phone, so he could text. But he could text to email. So he's writing me very short emails. And he starts writing to me, I'm listening to your shiurim on the phone and I love them. I wrote back, thank you very much. And then he writes again, I appreciate it so much. And again the next week. So after a few weeks, I said, he's reaching out to me. He needs something. So I wrote back how amazing it is and how much I appreciate the feedback. I wish I him hatzlacha. He says, could you please call me? And he leaves a telephone number. And I'll be very honest with you. It was very hard for me because I get between 200 and 300 emails a day. And that's besides telephones. And Pashtal Pitev, if I would do nothing else but just answer it, I would be working 9 days a week, 24 hours a day. And I know there's no 9 days in the week. And usually you have to eat and sleep at least a mashu sheba mashu. But something told me, call, the boy asked to call. So I took the number, I took the telephone, I dialed the number, I called him. He introduces himself. And he talks to me a little bit about his life. And then he tells me, I get so much chizuk from your shiurim, and I share it with friends who are struggling. And I just wanted to speak to you live and say thank you. Just say thank you. I didn't want to email I wanted to tell you thank you. And I thanked him. We spoke for a few minutes. I wished this right before Shabbos. I wished him good Shabbos. He sends me an email a few minutes later. Thank you so much for calling me. It meant so much. And I felt this natural urge, and I wrote back 3 words. I love you. Good Shabbos. After Shabbos, I get an email from him. And he writes to me, I love you too, and it means so much, and thank you for everything you do. And then he writes to me a few hours later, and I just heard that you're speaking for my yeshiva. That Tuesday night you're speaking for my yeshiva. And I want to thank you for helping my yeshiva. So I wanted to hear more. He told me about his experience. The Rosh Yeshiva could be made because I told him the name. the last name. He told me about his experience. I want to ask you, how many people you think call up, say, please call me, because you didn't have my number. I just wanted to say thank you. You look into these souls, deep, precious, sensitive people. So this yeshiva is not just a place of Torah and Yerushalayim, bevadai or bevadai, but it's Torah and Yerushalayim that's hatzolas, nefoshes mamish, vehechzigba, anhalten zu nefoshes gedoishes, aufheben, anwarmen. It's a yeshiva which is a schwitz. And a yeshiva which is a schwitz is aish tumid, tukad ala mizbeach lo yisichbe. With your help, this fire, this schwitz will not be extinguished. It will go from strength to strength, to be able to build a big binyan, to be able to take in more bachrim and more bachrim and more bachrim, and never to have to say no to any individual, loy nifgad mimenu ish, and not just take in to fill benches and chairs, but take in knowing that each one of them is priceless, and each one of them has the potential to be able to be the diamond it really is. On such a night, I say to Yeshiva's Birchas David, to the Menalim, the Rosh Yeshiva, all the Mashpiyim, all the Mechanchen, and all the Toim Chedar Raisa, Reb Avram Yekusiel, Reb Meshulam, and all of you are here. Chisku ve'imtzu al tira v'al techos, v'al sebonim atem, la'Hashem Elokeichem, and allow this Eish Tamid to burn, la'adu l'yolmei elamim, b'hatzlache rabu, b'sayata d'shmaya, ad bli dai. Thank you very much.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.